My Christmas gift was a Hawaii getaway, but my mom called me nothing and threw it in the trash. I stayed silent, but that was only the beginning of the real payback. My name is Jacob, I'm 29 years old, and I work as both a mechanic and a night shift warehouse supervisor. You might be wondering why I juggle two jobs. It's simple. My family has always needed me to pitch in. My brothers, David and Matt, never had to worry about money because my parents paid for everything. College, cars, even their first homes. They're engineers now, well-respected and well-paid. Me? I was never considered smart enough for higher education. You're just not academic material, Jacob, my parents always told me. We need to focus our resources where they'll be best used, my dad once said when I asked about college tuition. Instead of paying for my education, they encouraged me to get a job right out of high school to help support the household. So I did. I worked. And I paid. When my mom needed a new dishwasher, I covered it. When Dad's truck needed repairs, I fixed it for free. When David needed help with rent before his first big promotion, who do you think stepped in? I did, always. And yet, no matter how much I did, it was never enough. This past Christmas, I wanted to do something big for once. I wanted to give my family an unforgettable gift, something that showed I truly cared. So, I spent months saving up, cutting back on my own expenses, working extra shifts, and finally, I bought them a certificate for a stay in a 5-star hotel in Hawaii. I presented it at Christmas dinner, feeling a rare flicker of pride. Mom took the envelope, opened it, read the contents, and then, without even hesitating, threw it straight into the trash. "You're nothing," she said. The room went quiet. My dad looked away. My brothers exchanged awkward glances but said nothing. I sat there, swallowing every emotion boiling inside me. I had spent months saving for that gift, and she discarded it like garbage. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there. But the next day, I canceled their car loan. A week later, their car was repossessed. A week after Christmas, I got a text from my mom. "Jacob, the car is missing. Call the bank and fix this now." I almost laughed. Not our car, not Dad's car, just the car, as if it had magically vanished into thin air instead of being repossessed because someone forgot I was the one making payments. I ignored the message. 10 minutes later, another one came. "Are you serious? You know your father needs that car. He has doctor's appointments. He's stressed enough as it is." Sure, like I hadn't driven him to half those appointments myself. Then came the group chat explosion. "David, dude, just fix this. It's not that big of a deal." Mom is freaking out. "You really think this was necessary?" "Mom, you are selfish and cruel after everything we've done for you." That one actually made me pause. Everything they had done for me? At age 14, I got my first job at a gas station. That summer, my parents didn't ask if I wanted to work. They just handed me a list of family contributions I'd be responsible for now that I had an income. $200, 0 cents a month, Mama had said. "You live here, don't you?" Meanwhile, David and Matt got to play sports, go to summer camp, and take SAT prep courses, while I spent my weekends wiping windshields and stocking shelves. One night, I came home late after covering someone else's shift. The house was dark except for the glow of the living room TV. My dad was on the couch, sipping a beer. "You're getting lazy, Jacob," he said without looking away from the screen. I stood there, still smelling like gasoline and sweat. "Matt and David study hard. They're going places. You just work at a gas station." I had never felt smaller in my life. Back to the present day. Now, suddenly, I was the selfish one, the cruel one. I put my phone down and went back to my workbench at the shop. My shift wasn't over, and unlike them, I had responsibilities I couldn't just dump on someone else. But I knew this wasn't over. That night, my dad called. I stared at his name flashing on my screen. He never called me, not unless he needed something. I let it ring twice before answering. "Jacob," he said, voice tight. "What is going on?" I wiped my hands on a rag. "Not sure what you mean." "Your mother is hysterical. She had to take an Uber to the grocery store today. Do you know how embarrassing that was for her?" I almost laughed. "She could have used my old truck. Oh wait, they told me to sell it to help cover Matt's tuition." "Don't start with that," he snapped. "Why did you stop the payments?" I took a slow breath. "Because it wasn't my car, and because I'm done being used." Silence, then quieter. "You know we always expected better from you." A part of me wanted to snap, to yell, to finally tell him exactly what I thought about the way they had treated me my entire life, but I didn't. I just smiled to myself and said, "Yeah, well, I expected better from you too." Then I hung up. After my dad's call, there was silence. No messages, no fake apologies, nothing. But I knew my family too well. Their silence wasn't surrender. It was a storm gathering strength. For years, I had been the one keeping them afloat, and they were fine with that as long as I stayed in my place. But the moment I broke free, the moment I showed them I wasn't going to be their personal ATM anymore, that's when they panicked. When my brothers graduated from college, my parents threw grand celebrations, catered food, custom banners, expensive gifts. Mom cried happy tears as she handed Matt the keys to a brand new car. When I graduated high school, they tossed a grocery store cake on the counter. No party, no gifts, just a dismissive, "Well, you weren't planning on college anyway, right?" That was the moment I realized I was never the son they were proud of, just the one they expected to work. Back to the present. On the 10th day after their car was repossessed, Matt texted me, "You happy now? Mom's been crying for days. You're disgusting." I ignored it. The next morning, another message from Dad. "Let's talk, like adults." Like adults, as if they had ever treated me like one. I ignored it. But 3 days later, they made their next move. I got a bank notification, $2,500.00 withdrawn from my account. I checked my statement. Mom had used my credit card to pay her medical bills. She didn't ask, she didn't warn me, she just took it. Because they knew I wouldn't let them starve. They knew I wouldn't let my own mother go without health care. They knew I was the responsible one. What they didn't know? I was done being their safety net. The next morning, I canceled every automatic payment linked to my account. I blocked every access point they had. Then I called my bank and disputed the charge. Within hours, the money was back in my account. But I wasn't done. I opened a document I had saved for years, a contract my parents once convinced me to sign. The house they lived in? It was in my name. They had been drowning in debt years ago. To save themselves, they refinanced the house under my credit, promising they'd take over payments. They never did. I had been the one making every payment. And now? They thought they could steal from me? I signed a single paper. I put their house up for sale. The funny thing is, my parents had 2 other sons who made more than enough to help them, but did they? Not a chance. Rich people don't share. David and Matt both had 6-figure salaries. They drove brand new cars, lived in luxury apartments, and vacationed in Europe. But when it came to helping Mom and Dad, suddenly they were broke. I have my own bills, man. Money's tight this month. Money Jacob can cover it. He's good with money. They knew well why I was good with money, because I had no choice. I was the one who skipped meals in my 20s so I could send extra cash to my parents. I was the one who fixed their house when something broke. I was the one who put my life on hold so they wouldn't drown. And now they dared to steal from me. That was my breaking point. I stared at the house listing on my laptop. Once the paperwork was processed, they'd get the eviction notice. They'd probably call me. They'd probably scream, threaten, beg. I didn't care. For once in my life, I was putting myself first. The first time they used me, I was 15. My parents took money from me when I got a part-time job at a gas station. It was my first real taste of financial independence. I remember getting my first paycheck. It wasn't much, but to me it was a fortune. I had plans for that money, maybe some new clothes, maybe saving up for a car. But I never got the chance. Mom was waiting for me when I got home, arms crossed, handed over. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. "You live here, don't you? You eat the food we buy, use the electricity we pay for. It's time you contribute." Dad nodded in agreement. "You don't want to be a freeloader, do you?" So, I handed over my first paycheck, then the second, then the third. By the time I turned 18, giving my money to my parents wasn't even a question anymore. It was an expectation, and the worst part? They never took a cent from David or Matt. Back to the present. I checked my phone. 15 missed calls, 5 voicemails, a text from Matt. "Dude, you can't do this. They'll be homeless." Oh, now they cared. Where was this concern when I was covering their bills? Where was this concern when I was drowning in responsibility while they lived their perfect little lives? I put my phone down and took a deep breath. Whistle's first revenge. This was justice. When I listed the house for sale, I expected an immediate reaction, a barrage of calls, threats, begging. But at first, nothing. I checked my phone every few hours, waiting for the inevitable explosion. Instead, the silence stretched on. It made me uneasy. For years, my family never hesitated to blow up my phone when they needed money. If the internet went out, they called me. If Dad's truck had a flat tire, they called me. But when I put their entire house up for sale, nothing. I should have known they were planning something. The first time they played me, I was 20. My dad sat me down at the kitchen table, a stack of bills spread out in front of him. "We're struggling, Jacob," he sighed, rubbing his temples like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. "If we don't pay off this debt, we could lose the house." I looked at the bills. Mortgage payments, credit card debt, late fees stacking up like bricks in a collapsing wall. David and Matt were both in college at the time, living comfortably in dorms my parents paid for. Meanwhile, I was working full-time at the auto shop, barely scraping by. "I don't have that kind of money," I admitted. Dad exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "Jacob, you're the only one who can help. Your brothers are still in school. You've got a job. We raised you to be responsible. The guilt worked. It always did. So, I agreed to help. I took on extra shifts, drained my savings, and handed over nearly everything I earned. A year later, when I asked if they'd be able to start handling payments on their own, Mom laughed. "Oh, Jacob, you're so good with money. Why mess with what works?" That was the moment I realized this was never temporary. 3 days after listing the house, I finally got a call. Not from Mom, not from Dad, from David. I let it ring out, then listened to the voicemail. "Jacob, you need to call me back now. This is serious." Oh, now it was serious. I ignored it. Then Matt tried, then my dad. By the 5th call, my curiosity got the best of me. I answered. "Jacob?" My dad's voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk." I stayed silent. "You put the house up for sale," he continued, as if I didn't already know. "Yeah," I said, "I did." A sharp inhale. "Why would you do that? Are you really that angry over a Christmas gift?" I almost laughed. "You stole from me," I said flatly. "It was for your mother's medical bills," he snapped. "She's sick, Jacob, but of course you wouldn't care about that, would you?" I clenched my jaw. "If she's sick, why aren't David and Matt paying for anything?" Silence. Then, weaker. "They have their own expenses, and I don't?" I asked. "Or do my bills not count because I was never supposed to have a life outside of being your personal ATM?" Silence. "Jacob," he said after a long pause, his voice softer, "if you do this, if you sell the house, we won't have anywhere to go." I waited for the guilt to hit me. It didn't. Because I knew the truth. They could go plenty of places. David had a 4-bedroom house with a guest suite. Matt had a luxury condo with a spare room. But neither of them was willing to take Mom and Dad in. Because rich people don't share. "I guess that's your problem," I said and hung up. Desperation. The next day, my mother called. I wasn't sure what to expect. Tears, screaming. It was both. "You ungrateful little brat," she shrieked. "How could you do this to us after everything we've done for you?" I put her on speaker and went back to fixing a carburetor. "You stole from me," I reminded her. "You owe us," she shot back. "We raised you. We fed you. You think that was free?" I wiped the grease from my hands. "Mom, did you ever make David or Matt pay rent?" She hesitated. "Did they ever have to cover the bills?" I pressed. Another pause. "You were always the responsible one," she finally said, her voice losing steam. "We knew we could count on you." "Yeah," I muttered. "You could." I hung up. The house sold within 2 weeks. The market was hot. I got an offer above asking price. I didn't tell them. I let them find out the hard way when the eviction notice arrived. That was when they really lost it. David showed up at my job, furious. "You're actually letting them get kicked out," he demanded. "What is wrong with you?" I kept working. "You've got room at your place," he scoffed. "I'm not letting them move in with me. That's not the point." "It's exactly the point," I said finally, looking up. "You make 6 figures and can't be bothered to help, but you expect me to go broke keeping them comfortable?" He didn't have an answer for that, so he left. Mom and Dad ended up moving into a small rental, nothing fancy, nothing they were used to. Matt and David helped with some of the rent, but not all of it. Because rich people don't share. I heard through the grapevine that they were miserable, complaining about the neighborhood, the tiny space, complaining that I had betrayed them. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care. I was free. 6 months had passed since I sold the house. 6 months of freedom. I no longer checked my phone, expecting demands for money. I no longer woke up to overdraft notifications because someone borrowed from me without asking. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself. And my family? They were suffering. Not in the way you might think. They weren't homeless, they weren't starving, but they were uncomfortable. And for people like them, that was worse than any real hardship. They had to budget for the first time in their lives. Mom had to get a part-time job. Dad had to sell his truck and drive an old beater. And David and Matt? They had to face a reality they had never prepared for. One where I wasn't there to take responsibility for them. The last family dinner, before I cut ties completely, I decided to give them one last chance. It was Mother's Day, and as expected, Matt and David made reservations at an upscale restaurant, the kind of place where a steak costs more than I used to make in a day. They invited me, not because they missed me, but because they needed someone to split the check. I almost declined, but then I had an idea. I showed up 10 minutes late, not by accident, on purpose. Mom looked thrilled when I walked in, not because she was happy to see me, but because for a moment she thought I had come crawling back. "Jacob," she gasped, pressing a hand to her chest like she was seeing me for the first time in years. "I knew you wouldn't abandon your family forever." I forced a polite smile. "Happy Mother's Day," David and Matt exchanged glances. They knew something was off. We ordered food. They talked about their jobs, their investments, the struggle of finding good help. No one asked about me. long once. Finally, the check arrived. Mom pushed it toward me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Jacob," she said sweetly, "since you've been doing so well lately, why don't you cover this one?" I leaned back in my chair, studying their faces. David wouldn't make eye contact. Matt was smirking like he was in on some inside joke. And Mom? She looked smug, like she had won, like selling the house, cutting them off, and standing up for myself had been just a phase, and now I was back where I belonged, their wallet. I smiled, reached into my pocket, pulled out my card, then laughed, loud enough that the table next to us turned to stare. Mom's smile faltered. "Jacob?" I wiped a fake tear from my eye, still grinning. "Oh man, you really thought—" "No, Mom, I'm not paying." Silence. David looked shocked. Matt scowled. "And Mom?" Her face twisted with rage. "But it's Mother's Day," she stammered. I picked up my napkin, dabbed my mouth, and stood. "Yeah, and I already got you a gift." "What?" she snapped. "Your independence." Then I walked out. A new life. I never spoke to them again. I blocked their numbers, moved to a new city, got a new job that paid more and gave me time to actually live. I took vacations, bought a car, opened a savings account just for me. For the first time ever, my money was mine, not Matt's, not David's, not Mom and Dad's. And them? Last I heard, Mom had to get a part-time job to cover rent. Dad sold his truck and now drove an old beater. David and Matt, they still made six figures, still went on vacations, but somehow, when they had to take care of Mom and Dad, suddenly their money wasn't so available anymore. Because rich people don't share. The lesson I learned. I was 12 the first time I learned what being family really meant. Matt had a birthday coming up and Mom wanted to get him a new gaming console, but money was tight. She sat me down in the kitchen. "Jacob," she said sweetly, "you love your brother, don't you?" I nodded. Of course I did. "Then you wouldn't mind giving up your allowance this month, right? So we can afford a gift for him?" I hesitated. "But what about my birthday?" Mom laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. "Oh, sweetie," she said, ruffling my hair. "Your birthday isn't as important as his." And that was the moment I realized some people are born to take and some people are born to give, unless they decide to change the rules. 1 year later, I sat in my apartment watching the sunset over the city. My phone buzzed. A new number. I hesitated, answered. "Jacob." It was Matt. I said nothing. He sighed. "Mom's been asking about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Mom or her bank account?" A long pause. I chuckled. "Yeah, that's what I thought." "Come on, man," he tried again. "It's been a year. Family is family." I thought about that for a second, then I smiled. I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The final blow. 2 weeks later, I got an email from my bank. The mortgage on Mom and Dad's rental was delinquent, meaning Matt and David weren't covering it like they said they would. Meaning they were the ones letting Mom and Dad struggle. Not me, not the selfish one. I forwarded the email to Matt, no message, just the proof. Then I turned off my phone, leaned back, and enjoyed the peace of knowing that for the first time ever, it wasn't my problem anymore.